forgive me.
Kaito! Wait!
I'll do it myself, okay?
You can't pull this off on your own.
What do you suggest?
I'll do it with you.
This be the introduction, yo.
So I did it. Nearly 2 years later, and a lot of hesitancy, I played Road 96 Mile Zero, the prequel, latest, and most likely last installment in the game series Road 96. If you haven't seen it, my video that is, you may want to click that link right there on screen, as having done so will give you insight into who some of these people are and, well, what they're about. You could also do vice versa, watching this one as I've gotten better as a creator and go watch my original, but there may be some whiplash as my quality in production has since gone up. However, if you're already here, chances being you have seen my original breakdown of the characters from the first game, all those years ago. And you may know I have a slight disdain for Zoe Moeller, one of the central characters we encounter in this game. Since then, the publication of the original video, I've grown as a person and as a content creator. My latest work would put my previous to shame. In fact, my latest work would probably take my previous out back and shoot it. 2 years to be exact. But during my playthrough of the latest game, I noticed one constant. I still do not care for Zoe Moeller. In fact, she sucks. This game focuses on Zoe's perspective, leading up to the moment we, the player, meet her in Road 96 base game, along with a new central protagonist, Kaito, a rebellious cool guy who skateboards and is also hiding a secret. Kaito is actually from another game which is kind of integrated with the Road 96 universe called Lost in Harmony. The main premise of the game is that it's rhythm-based, and though at the time of its release it didn't take place in the Road 96 universe, Lost in Harmony gives us the origin story to Kaito and his late best friend, Aya. It's worth a play, but isn't needed to understand the story of Mile Zero. It mostly just focuses on Aya's battle with illness, with some slight plot tweaking for this story. For example, Lost in Harmony takes place in more of a sci-fi setting, and this story takes place in the 90s, no cell phones, that kind of thing. But nonetheless, we continue. I won't be shitting on Zoe through the entire video, and instead I'll give a bias-free, informed recounting of the events and save my own thoughts and opinions till the end. Making connections between the two games and ultimately exploring themes and relationships. Because as we'll find out, there are new and old interconnections with information to better fill in the gaps that were left open. I 100%ed the game, once again, so I know my stuff, that's for sure. At this point, I'm a self-proclaimed Road 96 expert. I could tell you all the ins and outs, like if you do A, B will happen, and where to find all the secrets and Easter eggs. It's almost embarrassing how much I know about this game. This next part is a little background information on the studio and development, so if you want to just jump ahead to the breakdown, skip to the timecode on screen. The Road 96 series was developed by DigiArt Studios, a French game developer, who actually made Valiant Hearts: The Great War, another game I was a big fan of, which is totally different in mechanics, so that was cool to learn that they clearly have range. Made by a team comprised of 15 people, the stylized verse and unique story was received well by critics in the initial game. However, this installation, Mile Zero, was welcomed with lukewarm if not negative reactions. It seems that the team is done with Road 96 as of now because they're currently working on a new game called Tides of Tomorrow, a post-apocalypse multiplayer game where choices matter. Imagine that. Set to be released next year. With the history of the game out of the way and without any more holdups, let's begin. To preface, the world of Road 96 takes place in a country called Petria, which after voting in a totalitarian dictator by the name of Tirak, who puts consumerism on top and civil liberties at the bottom, the country is experiencing a bit of a silent, not so silent revolution. It's a police state, with all the fixings: propaganda, rebel groups, and civil unrest. 10 years earlier, in 1986, a supposed terrorist attack took place at the northern border, or Memorial Mountain, which killed a couple dozen people, including rebel group members going by the name of the Black Brigades and Tirak loyalists alike. Teens are escaping the country for a better life, often hitchhiking, and the regime is playing cleanup for any outspoken individuals or groups. And that's where we find our current day situation, May 1st, 1996. We open with a GNN broadcast hosted by our favorite pro-authoritarian newscaster, Tucker Carlson. Oh, that's not right. Let me check my notes. Ah! It appears this is a Juan Sonia Sanchez from the previous game. Sonya is our #1 source for fresh Tirak propaganda, promoting his rule and cementing the ideal beliefs hand-delivered from the state. She was at the attack of 86 10 years earlier and has 2 brothers that go by Stan and Mitch, who are more like rebels without a cause types rather than Tirak loyalists. If you recall, she witnessed a young girl die during this attack, and now that girl's father, Jarrod, is hunting down Sonya with the aim to kill her, and he doesn't believe she did all she could to save his daughter. Sonya has celebrity status, envied by many, including a security guard by the name of Adam, but that feeling may be more complicated than I'm naming right now. She lives in the best neighborhood in the entire country, Oasis Villas, only 2 houses down from Tirak in a city called White Sands. She informed the viewers that Tirak is preparing the presidential park for a major announcement. Sonya suspects that it's possible he's gearing up to announce his candidacy for re-election, but it could be anyone's guess. She also wonders if the Black Brigades, the supposed group responsible for the attack of 86, will try to interfere. Before expanding further on this line of wondering, Sonya announces that she just received breaking news. A large sandstorm is projected to hit White Sands in only a couple of days. This creates a nervous atmosphere, as the last sandstorm, Sandstorm Colton, caused massive damage. However, this time precautions are being taken, and that White Sands is still one of the best places in all of Petria to live. She shows her own house, which is centerpieced by a giant pink star. And with that, until next time, this has been The Sonya Show. With the broadcast ending, we cut to one of the main characters, Kaito, who lays on a couch in what we'll come to discover is the secret base of operations for teenage delinquency, an unfinished parking garage or building left in permanent construction. Kaito calls this latest episode of The Sonya Show total BS, while looking at a photo of him and a girl skateboarding through the desert highways of Petria. In the form of a flashback or daydream, we begin what will become the main components of gameplay in Mile Zero. I'm not sure what the game style or genre is particularly called, but this little section and sections like these aren't unique to just this game. My coworker called it trail runners or path runners, something along those lines. We're pretty much set up to engage in a Subway Surfer game loop or even our Radical Hedgehog of the 90s and early 2000s. Basically, we'll be riding a skateboard on a predetermined path, collecting coins and experiencing narrative elements that help tie together scenes almost as a fancy transition. On these runs, there will be obstacles to avoid and dodge that, if hit, will reset your progress by a bit and affect your overall score received at the end. For namesake, we'll call this one the Trombone Run, or Ride, as it's depicted as a trombone symbol in the glimpse of runs in our bottom left corner. We open with Kaito skating along a futuristic track while being trailed by a blue ghost. Kaito calls out to the ghost, giving us her name, Aya. Doing flips and loops, we make it further into the track before Aya is absorbed by a wall of red tentacles. Kaito is clearly frightened and wants to know what's happening. We go through the wall of tentacles, being introduced to a new world, one of ruin and corruption. This section can be symbolized as Aya's cancer, something that she dies from, as we'll come to find out in the future. Avoiding the attacks from the appendages, we make it through to another section that comes on abruptly, with the sound of a trombone playing, knocking us out of what I interpreted as Kaito's negative headspace into a more positive one through the power of music. Zoe skates past us and tells Kaito, "What's up?" We then take over as her, skating on roller skates this time, through a land of music. In the last sections of the track, Zoe flies through the bell of a trombone, and on the other side, we see Kaito. As the map ends, Zoe plays music at Kaito and into his ear. We are then introduced to a cutscene where Kaito expresses his dismay about Zoe playing right at him. We then take over as Zoe, transitioning to a first-person perspective. We sit on the couch with Kaito in the co-owned hideout. This is what we'll call the start of Act 1. Kaito seems downtrodden, and Zoe can either, based on what the player decides, say, thinking about Aya again, or, your dog die or something? Kaito talks about the last 2 years. Hey, it's been 2 years since I made, my last one. This lines up almost perfectly. Reflecting on Aya's death, the source of which can be gathered after selecting certain dialogue choices. We can then determine Aya died from cancer. Cancer caused by pollution in Colton City, where Kaito is originally from. Pollution stemming from Petria's main export, oil. He's deeply saddened by Aya's loss and that she was his best friend prior to Zoe. Zoe can talk about how close her and Kaito have become in this moment, or let Kaito speak his mind. Kaito eventually brings up the fact that Zoe was actually at the border during the attack of 1986 and thinks it would help to talk about it even though she would have only been 7 or 8, as she is now 17 or 18 and Kaito is only 16 or 17. Zoe begins having a panic attack as the screen pulses in purple intensity. This is where we are given 2 dialogue choices with icons, one being a light bulb and the other a house. This is also where we are introduced to Miles Zero's ideology meter, something I enjoyed about this entry that the other did not have. Zoe is torn between her Petrian nationalist ideology, finding and providing support to the regime, the status quo way of life, represented by the house, and the concept of doubt in Petria, doubt in Tirak, represented by the light bulb. I played this game 2 to 3 times to get both variations, doing the opposite choice for each one of the individual playthroughs, as there are 4 endings. We'll discuss the implications closer to the ending, but trust me, there are a lot of these choices waiting in plain sight. For example, propaganda posters litter the 4 areas you'll find yourself in. They're everywhere, and in great quantity. Posters that can either be torn down and vandalized or re-adhered to the wall. There are also cameras around to spot you doing this that will provide unique dialogue if caught. Tearing a poster down is light bulb, putting it back up, house. Engaging with these posters will affect both Kaito and Zoe, shifting their respective ideology meters. Zoe has a bias towards Petrian nationalism, and in this first playthrough, for Zoe, I went with the side of doubt, as it was most likely the canon choice for her. Or was it? The 2 eventually get up from the couch and Zoe is allowed to explore the base of operations. There's an arcade machine and Kaito mentions that Zoe loves a teen rock band called the Little Tiraks, state-funded rebellion bought and sold in a neat little package. He also mentions how life must be nice for the Minister of Oil's daughter, especially living next to Sonia Sanchez in Tirak's palace, a secret held to the end of the game in the first one, but something we'll become painfully aware of as this game goes on. Kaito says he's got a dash and that he was going to meet his mom at the square, the presidential square. Being left alone as Zoe, I begin to explore. I check out the arcade machine first, where we play the Miles Zero version of Google Dino Jump. On the arcade is also a cassette tape, one of the 15 that can and should be collected throughout the game. After eating a loose cheeseburger and soda combo, I decided we should probably head home and get the lowdown on everything. If you head to Oasis Villas, the following will occur. If you head to the presidential square where Kaito said he was going, an event that is covered later in this video will occur. Either way, we head to Oasis Villas, one of the 3 locations found in the game, not including the hideout. The Oasis Villas is a unique setting, home to Tirak's palace, Zoe's house, and Sonia Sanchez's house. In the middle is a park, and there is a neighbor to the left of the palace that makes no appearance, but is later revealed to be a conspiracy theorist. Upon entering, we see a small boy playing on the swing set in the middle, who is surrounded by 2 guards. This boy is Tirak's son, Colton Tirak. Tirak's first name is like Henry or something, who, from recent memory, is notably absent from the first game. Colton asks us to push him on the swing set. Depending on our performance of QuickTime events, we can send Colton flying through the air, where Frank, Colton's bodyguard, can catch him, preventing injury, giving Colton a positive yet frightening encounter. Or we can perform poorly, pushing the young boy, sending him toppling to the ground, where he scrapes his knees. Either way, Colton and his entourage retreat into the palace. Kaito is seen talking to the palace guard, yet despite telling us he had to go meet with his mom in a different area. When approached, we are requested by Kaito to distract our father, and a man in the front yard of our house, as Kaito has not been accepted by Zoe's father yet. We can also learn from Steve, who Kaito is talking to, the gate guard, that Zoe used to babysit Colton when she was younger. Sonia is chilling poolside, and in our very own front yard is Zoe's father, the Minister of Oil, Petria's main export, talking to a familiar face. Adam. Adam in the original game is the bodyguard of Sonia Sanchez, but it seems in Miles Zero we will come to learn of his humble beginnings. We come to talk to Zoe's father, who we make small chit-chat with to play up a distraction so Kaito can sneak into our room using the house side trellis. As we're talking to Daddy Dearest, we learn that Adam is actually our own personal bodyguard now, who our father has decided to acquire with the looming announcement from Tirak and the uptick in Black Brigade activity. Kaito gets to where he needs to be and we excuse ourselves from the conversation, but as we meet with Kaito, next to the house, Adam ambushes us with an introduction. Kaito stays hidden, unnoticed by the oafish Adam. After shaking off Adam, who says he'll hang out with us later, we go up to the balcony of our room with Kaito. then being introduced to one of Zoe's skills, lockpicking, as the balcony door to her room is locked, and for some reason she doesn't have the key. Once in Zoe's room, Kaito asks about a toy that the Oasis Village citizens received from a birthday party for Colton. This toy was mentioned when conversing with Steve. It's a really weird toy. This toy is a complete scale model of the palace, which is an odd gift, but Kaito has an unusual interest in it. Kaito explores Zoe's room, finding a poster for the little T-Rex on her wall, confirming his earlier suspicions that she's a sellout. This is when Adam begins banging on the door, ready to hang out with Zoe. Zoe exclaims that her and Kaito need to get out of there, beginning our second ride. We will call this ride the Escape from Adam. Zoe and Kaito make a break for it. Zoe begins roller skating through Oasis Villas and the rest of White Sands, Adam in hot pursuit. She rides past Sonia, who shows a concerned and personal relationship with Zoe, which is a new dynamic, before jumping over a car where inside we see Jarrod, Sonia's stalker. As a quick reminder, Jarrod is that character from the first game with a mission to kill Sonia for letting his daughter die in the attack of '86. He is one of my favorites, as his activities are always enjoyable and suspenseful. In Mile Zero, he doesn't have much of a presence, if any, but can be seen throughout various moments in the game, which I think, you know what, yeah, I'll say it, that was this game's first problem, is lack of Jarrod. The chase progresses, and after a big show-off on the top of a skyscraper once Adam grows to like 10 feet tall, because most of these rides are going to be symbolic anyways, Zoe locks Adam in the garage of her house. After the big chase sequence, we resume in the secret hideout of Kaito and Zoe, where, with Kaito, we talk about how Zoe's mom, who one day up and vanished from White Sands. Kaito asks Zoe questions like, have you heard from her, and why does Zoe think she left? Before getting too soul-searchy, Kaito asks Zoe to help him build his skateboard ramp by hammering some nails into planks of wood. Zoe agrees, and they get to work. It's a fun little minigame that I enjoyed. It was activities like these that really made the first game what it was. Don't get me wrong, they are present in Mile Zero, but they aren't the basis of it, something I felt the developers could have leaned more into. After a couple of solid taps with the hammer, the ramp has progressed nicely. It's not done, but it's a start. Kaito thanks us for our help, but informs Zoe that he has to do something at the park and steps out. Every time Kaito does this, Zoe says, classic Kaito, part boy, part ghost. Zoe lays on the couch, enjoying some alone time. After a while, we mosey around the base for a little, but eventually make it to the Presidential Park, the second of the three areas. The Presidential Park is one of the more dull locations. It's green, that's different, it's a green area, lots of plants, which is uncommon in the world of Road 96, with underlying Asian themes mixed in. At this park is where Tirak is setting up for his big announcement, but we also come across Kaito and his father Da, a groundskeeper and working class member of White Sands. There, we encounter a cutscene where Cyrus, a leader of a feng shui group, gives Da a hard time for just doing his job, something about a leaf blower messing up the flow of chi, making too much noise. Kaito witnesses this and has an idea. Meeting him further into the area, we discover the lad trying to break into a storage shed to access the PA system and music the class plays. As Zoe, we can assist in this little project. Going in through the side entrance, we can discover a window has been conveniently left open. Inside, we can get the code for the main door and steal batteries if we'd like. However, this action will contribute to an anti-nationalist ideology choice. You can also choose not to steal the batteries, as stealing is wrong. Once inside the main compartment of the storage shed, Kaito wants us to tap his Walkman into the PA system, which he does regardless of if you stole the batteries. Doing this little activity gives Kaito access to play whatever he'd like, so Kaito plays some heavy metal to ruin Cyrus's class, and thus begins our third run, the park run. Pretty simple stuff here. Zoe and Kaito make a grand escape while ruining the class through a Japanese garden-inspired area. Once escaping, both Kaito and Zoe find themselves back at the secret hideout, where Kaito asks Zoe if she ever wonders what's on the other side. Not of life, but the border. If she ever thinks about leaving White Sands and escaping all of it. As Zoe, you can say yes, no, or I don't know. Kaito changes the subject, asking Zoe if she's down for a hideout makeover. Really breathe some life into this old unfinished parking garage. This can be done by having located spray paints and trash cans across the areas we've explored thus far, with there being roughly 14 colors to collect. I draw a tasteful tag and say it was in the name of freedom. Kaito paints a Black Brigade logo, which is like painting the ISIS flag on the wall. Kaito says that he's got to dash again as he has to get to his shift at the newsstand where he has a job as a paperboy. Zoe expresses dismay, giving Kaito a lot of shit for having to work a job. Kaito is rather submissive about this, not pointing out the fact that Zoe has a lot of privilege in life that most people don't have. I know I said I'd keep my bias of not liking Zoe till the end, but from this point on, she starts to develop her worst qualities. I won't give a ton of commentary on this, but some of the dialogue and actions are crucial to the game's story. Make of this what you will. So off to work Kaito goes, and as Zoe, we are left to trail behind. We arrive at T-Rex Square, a metropolitan urban area designated as a living and communal space for the lower, middle, and working class of Petria. Where Zoe lives is an elite area, only home to 4 families, the 1%. This is where the other 99% lives. There are a few restaurants, apartments, and small design choices like statues of Tirak, and an overlook section where citizens can look out on the beautiful scenery of the Petrian Desert. If we look out onto the desert, we can see Jarrod holding someone at gunpoint. Dead center is the newsstand. We approach the newsstand and find Kaito's mother, Anzu, who is talking to the owner of the newsstand, Mrs. Danton. Apparently, Kaito never showed up to work today and Mrs. Danton has no one to distribute the papers. Anzu says he fell ill. Zoe offers her services and a fun little activity of throwing papers begins. We come across Anzu during our route mid-conversation with another worker talking about codes, but notices us and quickly ends the exchange. Anzu thanks us for doing Kaito's job, and she informs where we can find him, that being the only basement apartment in all of Petria at the end of the workers' housing section. Exploring the square a little more before heading that way, we discover a woman who shows signs of being a Black Brigade, making mention of a robber, which we can report to the police at their station, which is also conveniently placed in the low-income part of town. After some goofing, we go to see our dear friend Kaito, who is apparently sick now. Walking into the housing alley, we discover that Kaito is living in the slums. Arriving at the apartment, we make our presence known, to which Kaito invites us in. We come into Kaito's home, and it's in a state of disarray. Despite his low-income status, the house could be cleaner in my little working-class opinion. This scene, I believe, is used to demonstrate the polarity between the life Zoe lives and the life Kaito lives. Kaito has no room of his own, and sleeps on the couch in the living room, whereas Zoe's entire room is roughly the size of Kaito's apartment. Zoe asks Kaito why he didn't go to work today. He seems fine. Kaito explains that it was actually the paper's headline that set him off, so much he couldn't handle distributing such falsehoods to his own people. The headline explained that everyone in Colton City is happy and loves Tirak. Kaito, being from this city, explains to Zoe that this simply isn't the case. People in Colton City hate Tirak, and to imagine that this small alley that she now finds herself in is the majority of Colton City is comprised of. It's not the paradise that the regime would have you believe. Zoe is doubtful of all of this, thinking that the government simply wouldn't print bold-faced lies. Kaito states that he guesses he'll just have to show her the truth, thus beginning the 4th ride, the journey to Colton City. The ride begins with Zoe leaving White Sands and going through the oil rig-covered deserts to arrive at exactly what Kaito was explaining. We go through film sets, seeing that it's all just a ruse for control and propaganda to those living in nicer areas to be able to ignore an appeal to empathy. Keep in mind that this is the same city where Aya contracted cancer and died. We continue traveling through Colton City, seeing pollution, slums, and degradation. Throughout her ride, Zoe sees the facts of life, but towards the end is still doubtful of anything Kaito has told or shown her. Like every other ride, at the end we end up back at the hideout. Kaito is working on the ramp. Zoe is given the dialogue choices to explain that she's bored. Kaito says he doesn't see how that's his problem. Zoe suggests messing with the working class, harassing them really, and calling Kaito's dad boring, but the two begin brainstorming ideas on what to do until they end up on Truth or Dare. A few childish challenges later, like screaming, "I support this political candidate," and jumping in dumpsters, Zoe finally confronts Kaito with the truth of an earlier interaction she witnessed that I actually omitted and forgot to include. An interaction that took place between one of the rides and at the fence line of this hideout, between Kaito and John. John from the first game is a major leader and liberation fighter for the Black Brigades. He drives around with an illegal radio broadcasting Black Brigade and anti-Tirak sentiments. Kaito says that he's simply a family friend, letting him know how other family and friends are doing back in Colton City. Zoe asks why he couldn't just call, and Kaito explains that John was also bringing them money, as we've seen. He is poor. Zoe, not entirely convinced, is diverted by Kaito, saying that he has to dash, but he thinks it's time she heard the truth. He tells Zoe to be at the top of his building and that he'll leave the door unlocked, but to be there tonight. Later that night, Zoe goes to the mid-levels of the apartment complex where we can see how the middle class lives. Noticing a few things, Zoe finds that the rules of the complex are rather strict. Zoe makes her way to the roof and meets with Kaito, who is hanging his feet over the edge waiting for Zoe's arrival. Kaito says he's glad that she made it, and that she's hopefully not afraid of heights. Kaito explains that he comes up here to clear his mind from time to time. After some quick niceties, we get into the heavy stuff. Kaito asks once again about the attack of 86. Kaito explains that it didn't go down the way Zoe thinks, and that the Black Brigades didn't cause the mountain to collapse, but Tirak did. She doesn't know what to believe. This begins our fifth ride, the attack of 86. Zoe is put back on that very same day, all those years ago. Outside the border are crowds of people, and we pass Sonia giving a news broadcast. Further on, we see a truck driver who is John's wife, or ex-girlfriend, driving into a barricade kamikaze style with an evidential bomb. This is new information because what I remember from the first game is she died at the event and was not the primary cause for the event, but this certainly changes a few things. The Black Brigades were what I would call soft extremist or political extremist light, but with this new information we can see with the addition of suicide bombers, they've fully crossed the territorial divide way before and aren't faultless in this whole thing. Quick side note, through some investigation it's revealed that the attack of 86 is actually an assassination attempt on Tirak by the Brigades and not a breakdown of the border for those wanting to flee. Connie Samford was John's ex-girlfriend and a member of the Black Brigades. She was 33 when she was killed in the peak collapse of 1986. She and John were supposed to kill Tirak on Election Day during his speech by crashing a truck into the stage. However, President Tirak was aware of their assassination attempt and triggered Mount National's avalanche explosions to save his life, causing its peak to collapse and kill hundreds of citizens, including her. On her ride, Zoe dodges rocks and debris, saying to Kaito she knows what she saw. Kaito says that her memory has been distorted by time and trauma. Later in the ride, we see Zoe's father, Minister Muller, standing in front of a detonation button with Tirak, telling him to arm and release the charges, essentially causing the greater collapse. This would be done to prevent the assassination attempt. He asks for forgiveness from Sarah, Zoe's mom, and presses the button. The planted charges explode. Back on the roof, Zoe recovers from reliving the painful memory. Kaito explains that there's something else he has to tell her. That guy, John, she saw him speaking to was not in fact a family friend, but a Black Brigade. Zoe is overwhelmed with questions. Why? And does this make Kaito and his family Black Brigades as well? Kaito explains that he doesn't know if he's a part of the Black Brigades, but he does elaborate that John is helping his family escape Petria at the cost of a favor. Brigade information and sources have revealed that Tirak may have a detailed report kept in the form of a file that recounts the actual events of what happened in the attack of 86. Kaito, John, and Brigade-affiliated people believe this file to exist, and Kaito, John, and Brigade-affiliated people believe this file exists and needs to make its way out of the country and across the border to be published. That's where the Lin family comes in. By being inside White Sands, Kaito and his parents can use their available access and resources to steal this file from Tirak's palace. That's why Kaito wanted the replica toy, and that's why he's been acting so strange. Zoe doesn't take this well and storms off the roof. Down the stairs, not the fast way down. We then take over as Kaito, who wonders if Zoe's doubts are rightfully placed, if the Brigades are actually responsible, and if they're a dangerous terrorist group. As Kaito, we make our way back down to the same apartment complex we ascended as Zoe, and have a different commentary on their surroundings. Kaito notes one apartment has a shrine to Tirak inside, and that the paper with the very same rules is seen by Kaito as oppressive instead of strict. If you look at the door inside the apartment complex Kaito lives in while playing as him, he describes the tenant as a man named Mr. Thompson, who lost his daughter in the collapse of 86. Looking at the cardboard boxes besides the door shows a toy dinosaur inside, along with Jarrod's books, clearly indicating that the Thompsons are none other than Jarrod and Lola, his daughter.
This right here is Act 2, I reckon, partner.
After exiting the apartment, we open with another GNN broadcast, 2 days after Kaito's confession, hosted by the one and only Sonia Sanchez. It is now May 4th, and Tirak has finished setting up for his announcement, stage and all. Supporters have turned out in droves and are excited for what's to come. More importantly, the dust storm will hit in less than 24 hours. Meteorologists, and maybe Sonia herself, are calling the phenomena Sandstorm Sonia. And with that, this has been the latest episode of The Sonia Show. We return to the base as Kaito, now officially beginning Act 2. Kaito looks off into the distance, clearly missing the presence of Zoe, when he catches sight of John and his big rig. Before meeting him down at the fence line, we grab a walkie-talkie from a secret stash of supplies. Reaching out to Zoe, we finally get a response via radio. Kaito and Zoe talk about the other night. She is still confused and hurt by the deception, but Kaito says that he just had to tell someone and that it was hard on him as well. Kaito explains that he'll try to come over later so they can sort this whole thing out. John approaches the fence line and it's time to meet. John wants to confirm we didn't tell anyone about the secret plan, not even our best friend. That is where we receive Kaito's ideology meter. The two options for Kaito are extremist and full supporter of the brigades, or a moderate, someone who looks at both sides of the fence. I chose to go moderate on this playthrough, but like I said earlier in the video, we'll talk about the effects of each ideology at the end. John cuts straight to the chase, saying that they'll need the file tonight. It's too hot, and there's a supposed leak among the information web. John gives us an envelope with the safe codes. We can either open it now or keep it sealed later. To my knowledge, from what I gathered from the playthroughs, this has little to no effect, as the envelope will be opened regardless at a future point. On our way to the exit of the secret base and towards Oasis Villas, we pocket a pro-Flores poster that was laying on the ground. Flores is the opposing candidate for the upcoming election. She is basing her platform on change and puts civil and human rights at the front. More importantly, however, she is anti-Tirac, which implies a lot more than just civil rights. We never get to see her actions if elected in the first game, but have to take a leap of faith she'll undo some damage. Let's take a quick side note, shall we? In my first video, someone pointed out in the comments that Petria was a lot like their home country of Iran. Keep in mind, this was 2 years ago, and geopolitics of the real world aside, this can be seen as an apt observation. Minus the religious factors, which is noticeably absent from the Road 96 verse, there are a lot of similarities between the Ayatollah's regime and that of Tirac's. But I also felt Petria in a lot of ways represents America, as I am American and thus viewed it through that lens. Maybe that's what makes it such a compelling and well-received story. That at one point or another, everyone's own country of origin has experienced injustices brought on by the system and a brushing with fascism. Road 96, in my opinion, is a game for teenagers, believe it or not. You play as a teenager without delving into heavier topics of actual police states and straight-up murder from a dictatorship. And if you do come close to broaching such themes, they often take place off-camera, or we're seeing the after effects. The adults in Road 96, whether they be pro-Tirac or pro-Flores, are often all under the mutual understanding of how to treat teenagers. Sure, you may get roughed up a little bit, but honestly, it's pretty light stuff. Giving them advice, but essentially assuring that they never come to real harm. Well, in certain cases, but like majority stand by. The police are almost cartoonish when it comes to demonstrating police brutality, as we've seen in the original game and we'll see later on in this one as well. However, back to Petria as a whole, we are missing crucial information even still to make larger inflections on whether Tirac is the actual bad guy, or as bad as the brigades say, or if the brigades are truly a terrorist group or even freedom fighters. For example, the main export is oil. We know this. Oil is a big thing in our own universe. It's one of the most sought-after bulk supplies needed to spur products and industry, leading to economic growth but also oil wars and toppling of governments. To expand on this, oil is often bought and sold, and it being Petria's #1 resource implies that other countries are buying it. But who? Based on this map, we can see the nation of Petria is a peninsula, and we're not given a big idea as to what the rest of the world looks like. In addition to this, there are more often questions like, is Petrian oil nationalized, as in, are Petrians controlling it? Like, where does it go, or is there a bigger superpower nation pointing where the flow of oil is to head? Looking at the politics, something we do have a glimpse into, Tirac was voted for by the larger public, meaning that he was running on a pro-Petrian stance, something that appealed to the greater public after potential oil wars taking place, and subjugation from, like, the northern country, which is apparently so much better. But why is it so much better? Is it because they've been exploiting Petrian labor and resources? Tirac also had one term of 10 years, which we have no idea if it's taking longer than expected to fix the problems from previous administrations. There's just a lot of unknowns that aren't openly presented because, as we've discussed, Road 96 is a game for teenagers. which means that the developers probably didn't want to imply doubt into every facet. It's easier to just say Tyrek is bad enough. Also, let's talk about culture. In Petria, and in general, Kaito and his family, the Lins, are clearly Asian. But if this is an alternate universe, then Asia potentially doesn't exist. There are also what we call Asian themes in one area across 2 games, but nowhere else to be found, leaving huge questions in addition to the others. There's no central nationality and racial tensions, or ethnicity-based problems. This leaves a huge gap because something that often keeps the ruling class in charge is little disparities like race. The working class can bicker over instead of coming to a consensus that they're being abused by their own government. This isn't even addressing the fallacies we find, like crossing the border but advocating for change even though you'll be long gone anyways is fine. If you truly cared for your fellow Petrians, you'd stay and fight, but by also getting out, you can give your first-hand accounts of the horrors of Petria, similar to North Korea. There's just a lot in the mix right now that isn't addressed and a lack of information to do the addressing. Nonetheless, these are where the areas the player must suspend their disbelief and just enjoy the metaphorical and literal ride that the Road 96 universe has to offer. Just a quick side note, I figured we'd touch on, but back to the story. To refresh, Zoe and Kaito have had a falling out, but he's headed to Oasis Villas with a walkie-talkie to try and patch things up with Zoe, and has to break into the palace tonight. When Kaito arrives at the upscale neighborhood, he is immediately pulled up to by a cop in his patrol car, asking if Kaito is lost. Kaito can say yes, or basically tell him to kick rocks. The result is the same, and the cop keeps on his way. Kaito lets Zoe know he's outside, and they begin to talk about the revelation Kaito dropped on Zoe. Zoe is doubtful the file even exists, and it sounds like some sort of conspiracy theory. Kaito apologizes for hurting Zoe and keeping the truth hidden from her. Before the conversation can make any real progress, the signal is overtaken by a nearby exchange between 2 familiar individuals, Steve and Adam. Adam, the bodyguard, is in the midst of asking Steve for advice about his love life at this point in the game. The potential love interest is unknown, but being outside observers who have played Road 96, we know this to be Sonia. As Kaito, we show hesitancy about learning more, as voyeurism isn't really our thing. Zoe disagrees. We then must walk around Oasis Villas, rediscovering and pinpointing signals with our walkie-talkie, listening in on the conversations. One said conversation is a broadcast from the conspiracy theorist neighbor on the left side of Tyrak's palace. This theorist believes Tyrak to be a lizard person or something along those lines. After locating a few signals, we get to the basis of the conversation and are given the opportunity to tell Adam some love advice. I go with, just tell her how you feel, Adam. Some other tidbits is that in Sonia's mailbox is a letter from Jarrod telling her to watch her back and letter cutouts from magazines. Sonia pulls up to her house in that signature white and pink limo of hers, and Adam is quick to jump at the chance and follow Kaito and Steve's advice, jumping at the chance to help Sonia. Upon opening the limo door for her, Adam is greeted with a hostile Sonia asking who the F he is, and thus begins another run. The Adam Love Quest run! Kaito witnesses his attempts and makes subtle commentary with Zoe. There's brief commentary on Zoe and Kaito potentially having a romantic connection, to which Zoe shoots down pretty quickly. Adam strikes out by the end of the ride, and we find ourselves as Kaito still playing Connect 4 in Zoe's room. We play a few games, but I was never able to win a game. It felt like I was playing against Deep Blue with how good Zoe was. After accepting the losses, Zoe has something to show us. We stand up from where we were playing the game, and she takes us over to a surprise, the model of the palace where Tyrak lives, and more importantly, where the file is located at. Kaito then tells Zoe that the heist must be tonight. She expresses major concern, saying that it's too dangerous and that it can't be done, but Kaito insists that it's now or never. Zoe demands that she be included in the plans. The two began looking over the details of the palace, entrances, exits, and where the file should be located. Once the details have been outlined, Kaito needs to go back home and inform his parents of the development with John, so off to Tyrak Square we go. After leaving Zoe's room at Oasis Villas, we see that police raids are occurring at the square due to the detected presence of black brigades. Kaito approaches his alley, where the apartment is located, only to be stopped by a police officer. Before we can argue, Anzu, Kaito's mother, calls him from behind. We then greet Kaito's mom as she asks Kaito to stay back and she'll handle this. Kaito inserts himself into the situation despite his mother's wishes. Kaito's mom pleads with the officer, saying that it must be a misunderstanding. Kaito simply calls this a violation of police authority. The officer guarding the alley says, well, if that's the case, then they'll let the inspector sort this out. A police van arrives on the scene, and before we can react, Kaito along with his mother and father are dragged to the police cars and separated. Kaito's father, is being roughed up and searched on the trunk of the car, and Kaito is pulled into the inspector van where he is searched, prompting some questions to be raised by the inspectors due to what they find. Thus begins an interrogation minigame. As Kaito, we are pulled into the van, detained by 2 inspectors. Those previously mentioned contents are as follows. A Walkman, which is accused of being used to listen to Black Brigade radio, which can be combated by saying it is actually listening to GNN, which will prompt a multiple choice question on who the reporter is. Correct answer, Sonia Sanchez. Next is our walkie-talkie, which is suspected again for coordinating with the Black Brigades. It can be circumvented by saying that the walkie-talkie is for practicing to be a cop. After those 2, we have the envelope with the code to the safe, which if not opened, is now so. These numbers, which are 41186, is also Colton Tirak's birthday. We can lower the suspicion meter by saying you want to be his friend or something and have to answer a question on who his favorite person is, which is Tirak or Dad. Finally is the Flores poster, which can be easily told off as studying the anime. If you get too many questions wrong, a suspicion meter fills, but I don't believe it actually does anything besides having to reset the minigame. Eventually, Fanny, a cop from the first game with a son named Alex, approaches the interrogation, telling the 2 inspectors to cut Kaito loose. In the first game, Fanny enjoys police work, but finds that things the regime is doing are reprehensible, so she's a bit on the softer side of emotional appeal. The inspector throws Kaito to the ground, where he receives a concussion, being knocked unconscious. His parents, now cut free, rush to his side, and it all goes black. As Kaito fades into the ether, he sees birds flying above him. Snowbirds. We begin our northern escape ride. This ride constitutes of traveling through what Kaito believes the northern unnamed country is like. The path is snow-covered, not a Petrian desert or oil rig in sight. Kaito rides the terrain on a snowboard instead of his usual skateboard and eventually finds himself after a series of obstacles through snow-covered forest back in the Petrian desert, before hitting the border wall gates and waking up. After beating the challenge, Kaito comes to in his apartment with both his parents standing above him. His parents inform him that the family has been fined by the police, taking all their money. This enrages Kaito, but his parents calm him down by saying that they could all be in prison right now, so they should consider themselves lucky. Kaito's mom hands him his walkie-talkie, and Kaito informs them that the file must be stolen tonight. They disagree as it's too dangerous. Kaito says that he can steal the file, but his mom makes him promise not to do something which is so clearly crazy. Both back away from their now conscious son and begin cleaning up the ransacked apartment. Kaito leaves the apartment and Zoe reaches out on the walkie-talkie. She asks if he's okay and Kaito lets Zoe know what just happened with the police in their apartment. Zoe is appalled and pleads her innocence, promising she didn't say anything to anyone, but Kaito has his doubts. And also it's strongly implied that Zoe did snitch. Zoe lets Kaito know that Tirak's announcement on the presidential park stage is taking place and he should head there to see what it's about as she is still grounded. At the park, police presence is high and the earlier mentioned stage is fully constructed, awaiting the man of the hour to give his big reveal. Kaito makes his way around the square, running into Colton, who is surrounded by his usual armed escorts. They kindly ask Kaito to step the fuck back. Once looping around the area, we make it to the main stage of the announcement. In attendance is Sonia Sanchez giving a breakdown on the events. We give Zoe the update, and she says we should give an interview. Kaito is reluctant, but Zoe insists as if he didn't just get assaulted by the police, or maybe trying to keep a low profile with everything that's going on. Sorry, that one slipped out. I'll wait till the end. After approaching Sonia and being falsely recognized as one of the members of the Little Tiraks, that teen rock group Zoe is fond of, we're given plenty of chance to embarrass Sonia and ourselves on national television, with childish antics like making faces when she's not looking. Eventually, the silliness comes to an end, and the Minister of Oil, Minister Mueller, aka Zoe's dad, gives a brief introduction saying that the announcement has been delayed slightly due to the broken speakers from our stint with the Tai Chi class. This development is blamed on the Black Brigade. Tirak ultimately makes his way to the stage, putting his foot forward by saying that the brigades, the traitors, can't hide from him, and to let this moment stand as the time he stood against danger, closing off by saying he will be running for his re-election. The crowd begins to chant 10 more years, over and over. The surrounding area goes red as the camera pans in on Kaito's face. Thus begins another ride. The Red Future Ride. Kaito runs through a cartoonist Petria riddled by the effects of Tirak's regime, a surveillance state controlled by absolute power and oil. Eventually, Kaito is eaten by a monstrous Tirak and the ride ends. When Kaito comes through, he is in Zoe's room. Zoe making sure Kaito is okay after the speech. Kaito says he's not sure, and to get his mind off of it, Zoe says Kaito should give her a tattoo. Not a real one, but one drawn in permanent marker. Kaito disagrees, and Zoe shows Kaito her stencil she made with a symbol of a bird. I take some creative liberties and call it a masterpiece. She's pretty happy with it, but also glad we used marker. Kaito cuts to the chase and says we should talk about the heist. Zoe begins to explain details, but Kaito says it has to be tonight and explains the situation. Zoe finally laments, but says if the file is real, Kaito has to take her with. That if the file is real, she wants to leave Petria all of a sudden. Kaito tries to protest, saying taking the minister's daughter would bring too much heat, possibly getting his family caught, if not killed, and that the brigades only promised his family safe haven, but Zoe doesn't care. Kaito semi-agrees to take Zoe if the file exists, and the plan is set. Later that night, the two are outside the palace, and the heist has begun. First obstacle, the gate, and the guardhouse. Every night, Steve has his X amount cup of coffee, and at a certain time, specifically, needs to use the restroom. He leaves the guard post unattended. The two sneak in and we're given a view inside. There's a PA system that connects to the palace and a list of numbers allowing us to call inside. The reason we don't just open the gate is that the release button requires a key and it's more than likely, says Zoe, that Steve has it, so they'll have to find another way in. On a table is a newspaper mentioning the S&M robbers and how they hit another successful lick. These two robbers are Stan and Mitch. We have encountered them in the previous game. Their whole storyline is that they are hunting down Jarrod, and Sonia Sanchez is their sister. Eventually we begin using the PA system, and on the list is the guest bedroom, which is empty, Tirak, who is out doing God knows what, God knows where, the guard post on the other side, and finally Colton. Eventually we call and persuade Colton to come down to the main gate by telling him we forgot something inside the palace, which doesn't really make sense. After a bit of persuading on Zoe's part, offering a hangout sesh as Colton is fond of Zoe from her babysitting days, he opens the gate and the two make it onto the palace grounds. Colton takes this opportunity to walk out into White Sands unattended. Once on the grounds, a ride begins. The heist ride. This is one of the more exciting rides. Going through the palace, both Kaito and Zoe must deal with unexpected challenges like lasers, motion sensing cameras, and not knowing which way to go and having to make last minute decisions at a breakneck pace. Eventually, however, Zoe gains access to the safe in Tirak's office. Making her way down a long corridor, she comes across a smaller safe. Entering Colton's birthday as the combination, she's in, and there it is, a file with the Petrian flag. The two set off the alarm and make a break for it. Kaito, waiting outside, sees Zoe, but she trips, falling down and dropping the file. Kaito grabs the file and makes a run for it, leaving Zoe behind despite Zoe's pleas. This was arguably the coldest thing Kaito does in the game, but it's one thing if she's caught, and it's another if he is.
This is Act 3, I guess. But don't be so blunt about it, Senpai.
We flash forward to the next morning, and it's a GNN report with Sonia Sanchez standing in the middle of Sandstorm Sonia that has now begun to hit White Sands. She announces Colton has gone missing. Quick side note, as you remember, after opening the gate for Kaito and Zoe last night, Colton ran out the front and into White Sands, seeing the opportunity for freedom as his bodyguard has become a bit oppressive. I guess he never came back as a citywide search for Colton is ongoing, and at one of the worst times possible with the storm and brigades and everything. The cameraman Earl is knocked over and the lens cracked, but he gets back up and continues filming through the cracked lens, demonstrating the turbulent weather. The primary suspects are the brigades, and with that, this has been the Sonia Show. We take over as Zoe for Act 3. She is talking on the walkie-talkie as she walks to the hideout, trying to signal Kaito, but he's not listening or is out of range. Eventually, Zoe makes it to where the couch is and sees a wooden platform leading to the fence. This leads Zoe to figure out Kaito was never working on any ramp, he was building his escape route. Left on the couch is a tape from Kaito. Zoe puts it in the Walkman, which is also left, and we hear Kaito begin to explain what happened. He thanks Zoe for helping him steal the file and is sorry about not following through with the deal they made. But Zoe is the minister's daughter, and that's just too big of a risk to take. This is goodbye. Zoe is frustrated, ready to pursue Kaito. She can either return home to grab supplies or just try to jump the fence with the wood platform to start the search immediately. Before any choice is made, Adam, Zoe's bodyguard, grabs her, dragging her back to Oasis Villas. Outside the palace back home, Sonia is continuing with live updates about the storm, mentioning how it's getting worse. Minister Mueller meets Adam out front and promptly fires him for allowing Zoe to escape the house unnoticed once again. Back in her room, Zoe begins quickly grabbing all the supplies needed for the trip and stuffing them into a backpack. Once fully prepared, she makes her way out to the storm on her hunt for Kaito. On Zoe's way out into the storm, we see Sonia giving her live updates still, that is until a trash can begins to fly directly at her. Right before collision, Adam jumps in front, absorbing the impact and protecting Sonia. Sonia takes note of this and asks Adam if he has a job, thus giving the layout of how Adam became Sonia's bodyguard for the next game. Zoe uses this distraction to continue her escape, ending up in the presidential park. There, the search effort for Colton is still underway, making the escape unnoticed all the more difficult. As we approach the stage, we see guards coming closer, but just then, Colton beckons Zoe from underneath the stage. We follow, and under the stage we get the lowdown. Colton begins talking about how he's yearned for freedom, and that this escapade is exactly what he needed. He also mentions that he knows his father isn't a great guy, but everyone deserves freedom, including the citizens, which is a cool premise for a third game. Maybe where Colton works for an older Flores, or we have to manage Colton's presidency, preserving Flores' work after she's passed on. Colton says he knows a way that can help Zoe escape, and to follow him. Colton leads us to the same shed that we broke into with Kaito to sabotage the feng shui class. Using loose debris, we break into the main section where fireworks are being stored. Colton says we'll be using these explosives to create a distraction, and Zoe can then make a break for it. We begin lighting the fireworks, which allows us to engulf the stage in flames, distracting the patrols. Colton tells Zoe to make a break for it and to be free. This initiates our final ride, the Zoe escape ride. Zoe begins going through white sands, dodging lines of sight and motion cameras, eventually makes her way out into the Petrian desert, but still, during the storm, even riding up a tornado. Zoe thinks on what she's going to do when she catches Kaito, but either way, she's still hurt and angry, so no matter what, she will find him, and the ride ends. Out in the great unknown, we come across a diner. Zoe's journey has been long and exhausting, so she decided to see if she can't find any clues on Kaito or a place to rest for the night. The diner is initially locked shut, closed by the government due to expected brigade activity, but Zoe finds her way in, and upon entry begins to hear banging around and rattling. Strange, since it seemed apparently abandoned. As Zoe makes her way to the back, moving an arcade machine to access the employees only room, we get a jump scare from the source of the noise. It's Alex, homegirl. Alex is a hacker from the previous game with questionably offensive slang and the adopted son of Fanny, the cop who saved Kaito from being further roughed up by the inspectors. Introductions and niceties later, Alex shows us a sick fan he's working on repairing and basically saying he's seen Kaito and his parents. They came through here earlier and may have left some clues in the office. After finding scraps of torn paper and putting them back together, an image reveals Kaito is meeting John and Robert at the Big Bear rest stop, a brigade HQ. Robert, from the previous games, is a more aggressive leader of the brigades who believes that people need to pay for voting Tirak in blood, where violence is acceptable and actually encouraged by Robert to the other brigade members. After grabbing some marshmallows at the bequest of Alex, we meet him on the roof where he shows us some temporary shelter and a fire. Zoe and Alex share in memories and stories. Alex wants to know what Zoe will do when she locates Kaito, and she's not entirely sure, but she is mad about how everything went down. Alex, over marshmallows and a fire, tells her it will be okay in the end, and mentions she should get some rest. It's a bit of a walk to the next stop. He also mentions that if it was this easy to track Kaito down, who is practically a nobody, imagine how easy it'd be to find the Minister of Oil's daughter if she went on the run. And if there was a sequel, Zoe would probably get captured by police and create problems for a bunch of random Petrians. Just kidding. I'm just joking. Zoe goes to sleep in the shelter. The next morning, we see Zoe walking along the road from dawn till dusk, arriving at the Big Bear truck stop, taking cover in a payphone. Inside, Zoe sees John talking to the owner. All of a sudden, the payphone we're hiding out in begins to ring. The operator asks if we're sure we, Zoe, see brigades there. John exits the building and walks back to the car where Kaito is. Zoe is livid by the sight of him. The operator demands an answer, and this is where our ideology meter comes into play for Zoe. If we sided with Petria, believing the false reality of the Tirak regime, we can tell the operator that there are brigades here, which is a wild choice. It's the equivalent of calling the SS on your ex-best friend who's about to give the Allies away to save a lot of people. If we sided with independent thought and doubt ideology, Zoe can say there are no brigades here. Depending on our choice, the two options can be blocked off, leaving us to fully commit to these decisions we've worked towards. These choices will affect the pre-credits ending you receive, and there are 4 combinations of which to witness that we'll go over later. We make our decision to not call the police, this time as Zoe. We change perspectives to Kaito, now talking to John with his parents. John gives Kaito's parents the keys to a new vehicle so they can't be tracked. However, there is one more thing. John informs Kaito that Robert, the more aggressive co-leader of the brigades, would like to talk to Kaito alone. This needs to be done before Robert is willing to hand over the new IDs to the neighboring nations so they aren't flagged at the border. With that, John takes off in his big rig and Anzu, Kaito's mother, has some words for him. This is probably the most shitty thing that John has done. He could have just, as co-leader, he could just be like, give it to me for the kid's sake, but whatever. That's not really about John right now. Kaito's mom tells him to be careful and to be safe, which is dumb because Kaito has gone against her advice every step of the game. Kaito then enters the gas station, giving the owner the secret code phrase John gave him. After being granted access to the back room, Kaito makes his way down to the secret bunker of the brigades and engages with Robert in the final room at the end of the hallway. Tired of this whole journey so far, as I had played each ride roughly 10 times for a grand total of over 100 attempts, done so to get perfect scores in the most difficult achievement, I tell him to give us our IDs and to cut the bullshit. Robert immediately starts by saying, down to brass tacks. He likes it, but here's some bullshit. He points to the diagram on his desk, which is a bomb he wants Alex to build for him in the next game. He says it's more than just a bomb, it's a brigade way of life. Robert then makes an offer to Kaito to join the brigades, putting a gun down on the desk in front of him that he'd like him to take. This is where Kaito's ideology meter comes into play. If you went to the extremist side of things, you take the gun, and if you went to the moderate side of things, you deny his offer to become a brigade and don't take the gun. On the outside, Kaito's parents get a bizarre feeling and eventually rush inside. This is when we take back over as Zoe hiding out in the phone booth. With the cars abandoned, Zoe takes her chance and breaks into the car to steal the file. Why would they leave it there? Back inside, Kaito's parents come to his defense, saying congrats on joining or standing in solidarity if he chose not to join the brigades, demanding that it's time to go and that they just want the IDs. Robert obliges, but he just needs that file, the file that they left in the car, in case Robert double-crosses them, I guess. Anzu tells Kaito to get it, and Kaito heads back upstairs to the cars. When Kaito looks in the hiding spot for the file, it's gone now. Zoe makes herself known, shouting that they had a deal and that Kaito broke their trust. An exchange takes place where Kaito says it was simply too dangerous, but Zoe won't hear it. You switch back and forth between Zoe and Kaito, the game trying to give you the unique perspective of each character, but Zoe really just turns out to be a psychopath. Kaito says it was life or death for him and his family, but Zoe is really just caught up on the fact that he lied and she feels used. I would imagine Kaito would feel the same for all the shit Zoe puts him through. He's just her toy, and she's mad he's showing some agency. Zoe, not having read the file yet, decides that she isn't going to give it back, regardless. Girl boss moment. Thus begins an epic brawl. You can pick your character of Kaito or Zoe to fight as, but the result is always the same. The two begin to actually fight, beating the shit out of each other. Zoe stomps Kaito's head with her skates, and Kaito swings on Zoe with his board. No matter who you pick, Zoe picks herself up off the ground after being beaten and skates off with the file, and Kaito collapses in grief. Or Zoe leaves Kaito on the ground and runs with the file, saying Kaito didn't leave her any choice. Imagine that, feeling like you don't have a choice. The following is what happens in the change of perspectives ending, aka open-minded and moderate. So, Kaito's moderate and Zoe's open-minded. After Zoe leaves, Robert comes out to see Kaito, who presumably tells him what happened. His parents following, Robert pulls out his gun, and it's been alluded that his parents would have been shot, but Robert changed his mind and shoots at their feet. So there Kaito is, left with no IDs, no file, and actively being hunted by the law. If caught, will most likely kill them. Zoe has a last-minute monologue at the trailer park where we meet her in the first game, saying that she finally read the file, and he was right. Tirak did cause the detonation at the Monument Mountain, and her dad was the red right hand of the whole thing. She wishes she could tell him that she misses him, and somehow, someway, she knows he'll get across the border, but how? Zoe could also find him as easily as she did in the first time, but she's a glory hound, so she's going to keep that file. Sorry, we're so close to the end, and I'm slipping more and more. If you go bad ending, where Kaito joins the brigades and Zoe calls the cops show up and begin arresting the group, but Kaito pulls out his gun and starts shooting at the police. This causes Kaito's parents to be killed, and Kaito's arrested. Zoe says that she's sorry and begins to cry at the trailer park. If you go the mixed A ending, the following occurs. If Kaito joins but Zoe doesn't call the cops, Kaito is separated from his parents by Robert and forced into brigade activity, which is dumb ending because Zoe teams up with the brigades towards the end of the first game and nowhere does she mention her friend Kaito, or do we see Kaito at all. Finally, mixed ending B, if Zoe calls the cops but Kaito doesn't join, Kaito's parents are arrested but Kaito becomes a lone teen in the same boat as the teens we see in the first game, just kind of hitchhiking to the border. These are all the endings and complete story to Mile Zero, so let's talk about it. I personally believe, and not just cause I'm a Zoe hater, that Kaito is arrested, meaning Zoe called the cops, something she's threatened to do on random teens in the first game. It just explains Kaito's absence in the game the best. But now let's get into the breakdown. Let's start with Kaito, our not so sparkly new protagonist. I found him to be a good addition to the game, and my brief time playing as Kaito and being around him as Zoe left me wanting to see his canon ending, and how his run-in with Zoe and the brigades left him, whether it be for the better or worse. It'd be cool if he was in the second game, and you as a teen could either patch or further break his and Zoe's relationship, but alas. Similar to how, you run into Alex, it'd be cool if you ran into Kaito. His overall conflicted rebel motives to help his family without hurting anyone made his journey through the game noble. In addition, it felt that his storyline actually had stakes, acting as an undercover operative while dealing with the battles of the everyday, impoverished teenager. Had Kaito and his family been exposed as brigades, they most assuredly would have been killed or tortured, as seen in the bad ending. I also found the extra background info given to the characters we already did know to be much appreciated, like how far back Jarrod had been hunting Sonya, or how close he was to her, in that apartment. Or that John used to be more extremist in nature and that his wife perpetrated the initial attacks in 86. I don't know why it says it's his ex-girlfriend. I could have sworn he said that was his wife. But moving on, I also thought that fleshing out the actual details of the attack was interesting. I can't remember if Minister Mueller had been revealed to have been the one to hit the detonator, but it was equal of a shock 2 years later. All these small details, like how Zoe gets the file like a punk bitch, but we'll get into that here in a second, or how Adam became Sonya's bodyguard, that was all good. I liked it all. It was nice. It was little details like these that really made the game a bit better than it would have been, which is not much. It's a pretty bad game. I didn't like it very much. Now with all that said, and the moment of truth, let's talk about Zoe. I'll keep it brief, as I am a grown man, and this is a teenage girl, albeit one created by other adults, but nonetheless, let's not dote on the negative. This game did not change my perspective of Zoe for the better. In fact, quite the opposite, she's even worse now. Full frontal honesty, I wanted to go into this giving her a redemption arc in my mind, but as levels went on, she only seemed to get worse. Let's analyze. Zoe is a rich kid that, despite being shown firsthand the struggles of the Petrian people, continues to buy into the falsehoods of a fascist dictator. For example, where you may begin to doubt your government if they started ransacking low-income neighborhoods and giving your friend a concussion, something may awaken in you. However, these are Petrian citizens, and even though Zoe has shown to participate in illicit crimes, it's Kaito and his little corner of the world that have to face the consequences. She gets pissed when her lower income class friend has to go to work, not checking her privilege on asking why he can't just piss off all day. As maybe Kaito needs this job to, not starve. She doesn't seem to really care that Kaito lost someone to pollution-based cancer. She makes all her first world problems like bodyguards and groundings Kaito's problem, then shows complete disregard why he may be advocating for change. She gives every benefit of the doubt to the government, but not her best friend despite concrete evidence. She loves pretending to be a rebel, but takes full advantage of status and doesn't see the problem with this. So much so, she throws a world-class hissy fit to track down Kaito and beat the shit out of him to steal a file vital to survival, even though she still believes it to be nothing, instead of cutting her losses like a normal person. Also, even though it's not canon one way or another, the writers determined it would be in her realm of possibilities to call the cops on her friend and possibly get him tortured because feelings are hurt. And this won't be the last time either, as she threatens you in the first game, a random teen. Time and time again, Zoe fails to identify her fucked up personality. I could go on and on about how she is a terrible character for the point she is meant to serve. Not only that is she a bad person, God, how I want to write more about that, but that's not what this is about. She's not some hip girl boss Gen Zer. She's a walking sociopath. Kaito didn't use her, it's the other way around. Even Colton, the president's 10-year-old son, has more socioeconomic awareness. Every single character in the game is redeemable except Zoe. Well, let's look at the game as a whole now. As a standalone game, I would give it a 6 out of 10. It was okay, not terrible or unplayable, but I would give the original Road 96 an 8 out of 10, and when held in comparison, I would give Mile Zero a 5 out of 10, maybe even a 4 out of 10. The mechanics were fun, but I don't see why the whole game was switched up. The ride segments were great for telling narrative pieces, but I would have limited this down to a one-time thing and focused more on the choice aspects of the game, something that made the first one a lot more interesting. It also felt like my choices could have been easily undone by interacting with posters. Mile Zero is a game I'm glad I played to get a fuller picture of the story, but there was a lot I wanted to see from it that just wasn't present. I had heard mixed reviews, and I think that and the fact that its main focus was on Zoe made me delay it to such a point. I would recommend it to any die-hard fan of the franchise, but not to anyone who hasn't played the first game yet, as this may be like a big turnoff to that person to the entire franchise. That's the complete opposite of what a prequel should be capable of doing. I wanted to go forward in time and see the future of Petria and not just a few days prior, to where we pick up in the first game. I also felt that Flores should have been a character as well to get a more vivid picture of what she stands for. It makes sense she doesn't live in White Sands, but being a politician is expensive, especially when campaigning. So it raised the question of where is Flores during all of this? Where did she come from? And where did she go? Cotton Eye Joe? Side note here, I actually found Flores' backstory, and here it is, word for word. Having lost her job as a trucker, Lupe Flores attempts the robbery of the VHS rental spot. However, she is interrupted by the two robbers on their first job and has to flee. That's presumably S&M. From there, she endures hardships of surviving in Petria, occasionally running into old colleague or GNN TV host before eventually meeting Lola. That's Sonia Sanchez and Jarrod's daughter, Lola, who takes an immediate liking to Flores and delivers her to the Black Brigade's trailer park base of operations. There she meets John, everybody knows who John is, with his girlfriend Connie. Connie's the trucker who blew up at the Monument Mountain, and Naomi and Steven, with their 4-year-old son Alex. Those are Alex's birth parents. She quickly takes up a payday opportunity offered by John, the delivery of the truck to the border, opening on September 9th, 1986. She leaves the next morning. On her journey to the border, she stops at a gas station and expresses concerns over seeing Zoe, left behind by her busy father, which has happened quite a bit already, and takes it upon herself to deliver the kid to him, as he will be present at the border opening where Flores is headed. On their journey, the pair get themselves in a dangerous situation while driving a brigade's truck on a very narrow road, as the vehicle starts falling off of it. Working together, Zoe and Lupe get out of the situation. However, the car itself is now at the bottom of the cliff, wasted with the two characters having to make their way to the border on foot. On September 9th, they arrive, regrouping with the aforementioned 4 Black Brigade members and Lola. John is obviously not happy with the loss of the truck, as many parts of the group's plan to assassinate Tirak have already been compromised. Connie then comes up with the idea to use the backup to ram into Tirak and take him out. She and John then leave to get ready as Lupe takes Zoe to the security agents at the wall and is invited in with her. While waiting for her response from Zoe's father, she overhears him discussing the decision to blow up the Mount National with intent of taking out the brigades aiming for Tirak, and leaves in a hurry to warn everyone, but it is too late. The rocks start falling, killing countless people in the process as Flores gets knocked out. She wakes up in the hospital and overhears the news of the tragedy, with Tirak blaming brigades for the explosion and threatening to wipe them out if he gets elected. Outraged by hypocrisy, lies, and egoism and corruption, she promises to put an end to this. So basically, that's Flores' whole backstory, and I can't really dig Zoe for not having some kind of understanding, especially Yeah, so basically that's Flores' backstory. She was a trucker who was done dirty by the system and then joined the Black Brigades, and then somehow these 8 people keep interacting with each other, so she picks up Zoe at a gas station where her father left her, and then meets him at the Mount Monument, where she overhears that they're about to blow up the detonate the explosives and kill a bunch of people and then blame it on the brigades. Outraged, she starts politically campaigning for the position, and thus that's where we find ourselves. But yeah, I don't know. It doesn't really seem like that can be canon. This is actually from the comic book, but either way, let's move on. I hope if after the new game, Tides of Tomorrow, they're working on this, the studio that's working on it does something set in the Road 96 universe so we can get a larger picture. I'm hungry for lore, and I feel as if I learned all I can from what's available. Who knows? Maybe the new game the studio is working on has Easter eggs tying it back to Road 96. And it's set in the same universe, possibly. The game Tides of Tomorrow is set in the far future. Who's to say it isn't this game's future? But for now, us Road 96 fans have to appreciate what we currently have and hold our breath for more content. The game is currently $3 on Steam, and I would say that's pretty fair. It could have been a DLC, but that just kind of complicates, you know, downloads and file space and whatever. Yeah, anyways, I hope you enjoyed my little plot breakdown and thoughts on the game. I don't normally do a lot of content on games, but I figured I'd owe this series as the original video I did and made this channel a little more successful. It's also like my biggest video for whatever reason, but yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. With that, stay safe, fellow Petrians, and peace out. If you enjoyed this, maybe throw a little love my way, maybe a little like and subscribe, maybe a little comment down below. We can all talk about our favorite characters from this one, what we thought on Kaito. I don't know. Peace out. Hey, what are you still doing here? Well, I guess since you stuck around, I'll give you some trivia. But yeah, T-Rex first name is Henry. Jarrod will kill Robert if he finds out Sonya tried to save his daughter before the big encounter. Due to the small cast size, a lot of the main characters voice other smaller roles, leading to silly moments, like if you save Fanny over a dying teen during a random encounter, she can still be the voice of the arresting officer if you run out of energy, literally in the next scene. John used to play soccer back in high school and was such a good goalie they called him the Wall. T-Rex appearance seems to be heavily based on the former General Secretary of the Communist Party of the USSR, Leonid Brezhnev. Zoe can be heard playing the trombone and humming Bella Ciao at the RV park, which is an Italian folk song known for being an anti-fascist hymn of freedom and resistance, tying it into the core themes of the game. In the burn-in encounter, if the player asks why Sonya sounds different, she reveals to you that her news reporter voice is fake, while her southern accent is real. She comments on how she's forced to change her voice as GNN thinks she sounds smarter without her accent. Stan's shotgun has a white and pink star charm, while Mitch's crowbar has a pink microphone charm. Both are nods to Sonya. If you attempt to cross the border by climbing Mount National, you will get to see the remnants of explosives used to the day of the collapse. And that's it. Those are all my facts. What are you still doing here? Get out of here. Get out of here. If you're still here, why don't you just subscribe? Come on. Come on, let's get it. Let's get to 3,000. 3,000 is a good number to be at. All right, peace out, y'all.